You're listening to The Talent Sync. The Talent Sync is a talent board and job sync collaborative podcast production about anything and everything recruiting and hiring. Literally the kitchen sink on how all things in talent acquisition work together, should work together, and how sometimes they don't. Now it's time to sync up with your hosts, Kevin Grossman and Leah Daniels. Today's topic is about pay transparency. Enjoy the podcast. Leah, Happy New Year to you.
Kevin, Happy 2023. Welcome to the party.
It's crazy town. It's already like, almost the middle of January at this recording that we're doing right now.
You stop it right now.
It is, right? It's just it's flying by, but we're excited because this is a new thing that you and I are going to collaborate on and do.
I have a question for you.
What's the question?
How you doing? Are you swimming right now? You got your floaties on?
Oh, I know. Thanks for asking. Actually, we do have another band of rain coming through. So for those that are listening and have been watching the news, or if you live in California, you know that we've had severe storms and rain and flooding and mudslides. And so my family and my neighborhood were good, but many parts of Santa Cruz where we live have been flooded and lots of damage and muds. And there's a great drive along the water called Westcliff Drive that's just now getting eaten away more than I think what they anticipated. So we're good. I mean, when you get 600 to 700% of your annual rainfall in a month,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's a lot. But you're good though. You haven't had any. Have you had severe weather up in Boston area?
I live in the Boston area. We never get severe weather we don't know about or know how to deal with. It's like we're gonna get some snow later next week. It'll be fine.
But you get nor'easters though, which can be severe, right?
Yeah. You just hunker down for 2 days. You have a fire, and then you try not to get yourself hurt while plowing your snow. Like that's really it. It's super easy. Our ground doesn't shake. I don't get like crazy hurricanes. We don't get earthquakes. We don't get any of this crazy stuff. The New England area gets snow. And if we don't know how to deal with it, then you don't belong living up here.
Well, and you do, because when you live there, you would better know how to deal with it. Unfortunately, in California, we still don't know how to deal with rain when people are driving. That is a problem. Just at the beginning of this week, I've never seen this headline before, that 90% of California was under a severe weather watch. I've never seen that headline before.
It's crazy.
So anyway, but Happy New Year to you. We're excited to do this. It is a new collaboration between me and you, Talent Board and Job Sync, and we're calling this podcast The Talent Sync.
It's perfect. It was meant to be. It's a perfect name.
I think so. And Talent Sync, Leah, is going to be about all things, anything and everything about recruiting and hiring. The fun part of that, the name was the fact that it literally could be the kitchen sink about everything in our industry. People, process, technology, the list goes on. And we're excited to do this because you and I have had many fun discussions over the past year and have gotten to know each other and really feel like this will be a fun show, an informative show as well.
And I think, our backgrounds, our interests are like both aligned and different. I know we've had some really interesting conversations around the candidate experience, the recruiter experience, and how like it's difficult to make them both great. And for me, it was fun conversation because they're such different points of view. So I'm excited that we can share that, invite other people into this conversation and help us all get smarter about it a little bit.
Oh, exactly. And your tech background is way above my pay grade, which is kind of a hint of today's topic. Way above pay grade. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what that. So where do you want to go?
Well, I think we should tell everyone a little bit more about ourselves.
Oh, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's start with you. Kevin, you are the president of the Talent Board. And what else do they need to know about you?
They need to know that I am a proud father of 2 middle schoolers, 2 girls, and I have a lovely wife. We've been together now for 25 years, and we live in Santa Cruz, California, which has, again, been getting battered by the storms. I am a writer, an avid reader, and now an aspiring drummer. which has been fun. And for those of you who have seen me on LinkedIn, sometimes I do post those, put myself out there and post those little drumming things. And it's been a lot of fun. That's definitely been a COVID learning thing for me. Late stage life, drumming. What about you?
I am not a drummer. I did live with a drummer at one point in time, though. We can save that for another day.
Wow, I want to hear that. I want to hear that story. Dang. Okay.
So I am a tech nerd. I like to say I'm a tech nerd. I learned later in life I actually am a writer. I didn't know this in college, which would have been very helpful then. Found that one out later. I have one 10-year-old boy, and I've been married for almost 15 years to the most patient person on the planet, hands down. And I have loved recruitment technology forever. I fell into it when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and have bounced around the space, but have stayed focused on solving problems with people and using technology to enable it. And so I get really excited about all these things. Kevin, I want to tell you though, so my 10-year-old is having some life lessons, and I do love a good life lesson. He is learning that you should not wait till the last minute to do things.
After you finish your story, then you can tell my teens that too, okay?
Oh, I'm very excited about when they actually learn it, but he's got to read this book that he's not real excited about, and he's supposed to read a certain number of chapters every couple of days. And every night before the reading is due, we start the process of like, you must read the chapters, because all of a sudden that is due and he has to do it in order to get through the next phase. And I was thinking about this, and it sort of relates to this big thing that's happening right now in our space, right? Pay transparency. It kind of snuck up on everybody, even though it shouldn't have. And what I'm seeing companies do is wait till they absolutely have to post a job with some pay transparency to fix the internal problem that they might have, which is they have not fixed the pay equity within their own organization. And I just was thinking about this last week. I'm like, wow, my kid is learning a very early lesson that he may not actually ever learn based on what we're seeing happening right now as companies are rolling into the new year, and they've got pay transparency requirements, and they haven't looked at their own internal orgs yet to figure out, are our current people within these bands, are we paying them too low? Do we have challenges within our own org that we've got to tackle?
Totally. Yeah, I learned something new too, now that we're talking about the subject. A salary compaction.
Ooh, that's a new word.
I know. Have you heard that term before?
No.
So this relates to the everything we're talking about around pay transparency on this our inaugural show, because it's very top of mind for many people in our space and recruiting, hiring, and HR, and companies big and small across industries. But I just heard this from some folks that I was talking with recently. They said salary compaction, and I totally drew a blank. I had no idea what they were talking about. But the idea of what they were talking about, I did get. I'm like, but I just didn't know I'd never heard it called that. So what that means is when supervisors and managers are earning less than their staff. And this is something that happens, right, when salary increases are happening for employees that eventually outpace those for managerial and supervisory roles, which it can happen anywhere, but it's probably more prevalent in hourly employees, unionized employees. You see it with first responders. And in fact, the person I was talking with was retired from the fire department and was talking about this. And what it basically happens is that it turns off people from taking supervisor roles with more responsibility, but not the pay. Again, I knew of this. I just didn't know it was called that. Salary compaction. But I think the whole point that I'm bringing it up, Lee, is that along this topic that we're talking about, when you were talking about companies getting ready and not being ready, right, to when they're being now by law in many states now, and include California, including now and this year, where they have to show salary ranges and publish the pay for every job that you're advertising for. But then you know how that complicates things when you have the issue. This all goes back to legacy comp, right? Compensation. I mean, years ago when I was more involved in talent management, and I've been in the recruiting and HR tech space for a long time too. That's really where I come from. And when I was working with a lot of talent management folks at different vendors, including PeopleFluent, compensation analysts and individuals it's pretty hardcore, right? When you're talking about a complex enterprise company that's global in scope, and they're having to comply to in-country laws and regulations that can vary dramatically from Europe to EMEA. I mean, it is very complex, but this is stuff that's going to have to be unraveled. And so anyway, when I thought about salary compaction, when I heard that and understood what it meant, when things are being revealed like this, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to start unraveling and has to, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just within the band or what you're talking about, the salaries on the leadership level. It's also geographical within a country, right? So we're dealing with these organizations who have maybe tiered off cities, for example, and said, all right, tier 1 city is San Francisco, and a tier 2 city is Chicago, and a tier 3 city is Boston. And the salary ranges vary within the city, even if the competency in the job is the same. And so now you've got these employees looking at you going, my output is the same as their output. I don't understand. Just because they chose to live in a more expensive location, isn't that their choice, right? So companies are now dealing with that component too, something that maybe everybody had accepted previously. And then on top of it all, you've got this culture problem, right? Forever, companies really did drive this idea of we don't talk about compensation. That's a taboo subject. It's a big no-no word. And now all of a sudden, how do you stop it? It's right there. It's visible. It's transparent. And so you can't really live both of those lives of having transparent salary bands and also not talk about it. So culturally, companies are changing just to deal with that as well.
They have to. I mean, they are doing it now. And as we call it, Candy community, Candy short for Can Experience, just what we're lovingly known as the Candy folks. But when we talk to our community, we have monthly meetings with them, just like you have your monthly group chats that you do too, right?
Our
with individuals, roundtables that you do, right? But we have a community meeting where we're talking, and this was a topic that did come up towards the end of last year. And there's a lot of frantic and frenetic activity and movement around what has to be done. Not only just in regards on the recruiting front end of when you're even promoting for jobs, but what do you start doing internally to peel that back? What was interesting is that when we first started talking about doing this podcast together and putting a list of topics together and wanting to starting off with this one, because more states now, at least when we talk about the US, are requiring pay transparency. I did talk to somebody, we're still kind of moving, I don't know if progressive is the word, but in the US versus some other countries around the world and other regions that are far from that right now, like in the Australian market, for example. But I think eventually it's going to come. These are things that were already happening, right? These kinds of laws were already starting to happen in various states. Now, what is it? 10, 11, 12. Washington now too, California.
Yeah, Washington has a rule, New York,
right?
New York City. But
the pandemic, though, I know nobody wants to talk about the pandemic. We're all done with the pandemic, but the pandemic, we're still seeing the fall. It's going to be years and years of the fallout and the change that's come from that. It kind of accelerated. It was like the super accelerator of change, right? These things were already happening. And that includes employees, feeling like they're not being compensated for what they're worth.
Time for a Talent Sync break.
Hey everybody, Kevin Grossman here, president of Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards. Our 2023 Candidate Experience Benchmark Research Program will open in January and run through August 31st. To learn more on how your organization can participate, go to thetalentboard.org.
Break time's over. Now back to the Talent Sync.
We saw companies starting to deal with this years ago, right? Colorado's law came out, I think they passed that in 2019.
Yes, before pre-pandemic, yeah.
Right, so they weren't even thinking pandemic. And our friends at Salesforce had actually done right sizing in 2016, right? And to the tune of like $16 million at that time in salary they had to adjust for. But they're looking at this saying, like, we have to fix this problem. And I think most people were looking at it through the lens of gender disparity, typically, maybe racial disparity. And, we're also starting to see things come out of the LGBTQ community saying, actually there's some disparities there as well.
Neurodivergent disparities.
Oh, a whole nother set, right?
That's a whole nother thing that's still...
It's a whole other thing that we're starting to tackle. And I'm excited that we're tackling it. But I think that, a lot of the Salesforce decision-making at that time was really a gender and racial driven approach. And we see that a lot with companies too, right? The things that they're asked to measure from our friends at the EEO, for example, are gender and race. So that's where they are trying to get this data from. So we know there's some gaps there, and we see these companies trying to fix it, some of them, but it's expensive. There's a cost, there's a real money cost, because you're not rolling in and lowering people's salaries. The only thing you're doing is raising the existing ones. Now, you could argue you're going to have to do that anyway, or you should do that anyway. It's the right thing to do. But now you have to, because they can see that they're below the band. They can see that somebody with no experience in your business is coming in at a higher price to do the exact same work that you're doing. And that's what companies are, they're rationalizing it, unfortunately, at a very fast rate, right? Something that they should have tackled a year or 2 years ago, they're now having to deal with now. And then, Kevin, I think the thing that the pandemic is really messing with people on is remote work, right? So you've got this pay transparency and it's remote. How do we handle this, right? Does it count? Does it not count? Do I put the pay on? Do I not put the pay on? The answer is you have to put the pay on, actually.
And I'm totally a proponent of that. In fact, when we look at our candidate experience benchmark data, and that's something that I didn't say at the beginning, especially folks that aren't familiar with Talent Board, is that every year my organization does research around candidate experience from pre-application to onboarding and lots of stuff in between. And one of the things that we started looking at more, there are a couple of questions. I mean, if we could ask hundreds of questions of the employers and the candidates, we would, and then we'd never get a survey answered, unfortunately. But the questions that we do ask and the candidates do answer is that the fact of the matter is when and those highest rated companies in our research, and that are rated by their candidates that are above average and even higher rated, when the candidates are told the salary without asking, without having to ask. And there are those that aren't even told after they're asked, that we see in our data. But when they're not having to ask and they're told the salary, whatever that is, range, band, or a specific salary for the position that they're interested in, those that have the highest ratings in our research are doing that 22% more often. And what that does is that elevates positive sentiment and the perception of fairness, which is 26% higher than all other companies in our data and research, which is a differentiator when candidates that are in the running are what's one of many things that they'll weigh when it comes to where they want to go, if they want to work at that organization, right? And one more thing, Leah, that aligns totally with, for the first time in our data this past year, the 2022 data set, company values, which is always interesting. It's always at the top of the list of what candidates are consuming or want to consume before they even apply for a job. But that was the number one piece of marketing content that they told us that they were consuming, values. And when you connect that dot to companies that are, and we're always advocates of being more transparent, not just about pay, about the process and everything that goes into being a job candidate and your experience, that makes a big difference. That's a big deal.
It's interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, people don't come to work for your company for free. I mean, they might like your culture. They might love the work that you're going to ask them to do, but they ultimately need to feed their families, house their families, heat their house. Those are, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Having a fun culture with no money is not actually the thing they're after.
No, and they're not. And of course, you're right. But what's also top of the list is salary and benefits when they're looking.
Always.
That's always top for any of us.
Always. I mean, I remember, so I'm in my 40s now, but when I was younger, I cared about maternity leave. And do you know what you couldn't ask about? Maternity leave. So it's another thing, right? Companies aren't terribly transparent about some of their benefits. And if you ask as a candidate and you don't know how to do that dance, it's complicated, right? If you want to ask the pay too soon and they don't want to tell you, it gets complicated. Do you continue? Do you not? You're in this very weird dance and you're at a disadvantage as a candidate, right? You are not a professional interviewer and the person you're talking to often is. So how do you navigate this? So I think this pay transparency is just, the beginning of a broader set of transparencies that I think are just really important for companies to embrace. And I think a lot of them are afraid because, maybe they don't have the best salary, maybe they don't have the best benefits, and they're worried that they can't compete because they can't offer those things. And I think it's a good thing for them to have out on the table internally saying, do we need to up our game? Do we need to do a better job on some of these things?
focusing on pay equity, I mean, across whether they're marginalized groups or just for everyone and from the sake of fairness, but this is where the other things do come into play, right? Like values, like what is it like really to work there? What are the career development opportunities? I mean, it's the combination of all those, right? Because so many companies that we talk with that are across industries, when we ask them about their direct competitors, there's XYZ, but when we ask them about, because everybody's competing for tech, even with the tech layoffs that are happening right now and there's cooling going on in the market, technology hires are pervasive regardless of what your industry is today, right? So when we ask them who are their indirect competitors, they're talking about the FANG companies. They're talking about the big names on the block for competing with tech, and they can't compete on, when you're just a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right? When we started coming out of the pandemic and the developers were being offered dramatic increases, 150, 200K plus on top of the competitive salaries at Amazon, at Facebook. That's a different story today, but I mean, you can't compete with that, but you can compete with what everything else is that you could offer for individuals at the end of the day. But as we kind of round out this topic, and again, our first podcast together, what we're doing, everybody knows, and you should know if you don't, if you live in a state that is requiring this, if it is a state law, or local law, whatever the case is, understand what you can be fined, because you may get a warning the first time. I know in California that, fines can be quite dramatic. I mean, it can be anywhere from $100 to $10,000.
I think it escalates quickly to the 10K too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if you're a repeat offender, right?
Time for a Talent Sync break.
Hi, Talent Sync listeners. I just wanted to share a bit about JobSync with you all. JobSync helps companies get more quality candidates out of their job board advertising and automates a variety of manual recruitment tasks by solving for the very low conversion rate challenges most companies experience on their career site. JobSync integrates your entire application, including all of your questions, directly into the various job boards' quick apply processes, providing you with fully completed applications directly into your ATS and resulting in 2 to 5 times more candidates while dropping your cost per application by half. This helps return up to 10 hours a week back into your recruiter's time through custom automations that are based on your business-specific recruiting processes. JobSync works with most major ATSs like Workday, SuccessFactors, and Taleo, CRMs, programmatic platforms, and job boards like Indeed and Zip. You can check out jobsync.com to learn more.
Break time's over. Now back to the Talent Sync.
Yeah. And the other thing that is interesting is, so I've been watching the rollout of this. So JobSync, as you know, Kevin, lives between ATSs and all the job boards. So I'm in the middle of all this job content right now. And we are seeing lots of challenges that companies are facing, realizing like, oh, we have a salary field in our ATS and we're populating it, but the ATS isn't putting it on the career site. So it's actually not visible, even though we're halfway there, right? So there's these just mechanics that a lot of companies are sort of working out the details on. And then there's the bigger one, which is actually education of your recruiters of what a reasonable salary band is. We've seen the Citibank $1 to $2 million salary that went out in New York City a few months ago, which, as everyone knows, no one's working for $1, and I'm taking the $2 million job. Hire me now.
That is. I know it. I don't even know who. Did you review the memo before you sent it out, kids? Because I'm confused
it's more
sometimes.
Pervasive though than you realize.
I know it is. I mean, it's happening everywhere, right? It's the end around, or don't post jobs that are in, like what happened in Colorado when I'm not going to post jobs in Colorado.
Well, I think there's some guidance, right? Like you should, if you're at a salaried position and you're talking about an annual salary, the high technically should be no higher than 40% more than the low. That's sort of the range that everybody's looking for. If you want to go extreme, we've seen as high as 60%, but we shouldn't see a salary range of 100 to 200. That's not a salary range. That's just us throwing our hands up the air. But on the hourly range, if you're talking about an hourly,
it's insulting though, don't you? And I'm not somebody who is commonly shames anybody or any entity or organization. I just don't do that. But it is insulting, right? To do that to a job, to put that kind of a range, don't you think?
Yes, it is. But if you're the recruiter and you're like being pressured to get something out and you don't know what the range is and no one's telling you and you don't have information for some reason.
That's true. No, that's fair. That's fair. And they're in a bind. to like, I've got to get something out because I got to start screening folks for this. That's true. That's fair enough. So again, the onus is on the leadership in the organization to get this unraveled.
Yep. And to get to a point where recruiters can operate safely with good information, not get themselves in trouble. And then, the last piece, which I think is important, and I think this will come later. Well, I think there's two things that will come later. One is that what do those ranges even mean? Right? What's the bottom mean? What's the top mean? Because everybody wants to be at the top.
Everybody's going to go to the top first. You tell anybody a range, it's the top. That's where I want to be.
Can you just pay me on the bottom of the range, please? I'll take that one. Thank
Well,
you.
of course.
I don't care. So defining out, what does that mean? And then I think the last piece, which will be real interesting, is how long does it take before we move to a federal law that sort of maybe makes this a little bit more consistent? Because I got to tell you, state by state is going to be a nightmare. If we add another 10 more states in with different rules, because the rules are already different.
They're different. Yeah. The fines are different. The compliance is different. Yeah.
Some states like Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken, they don't have to publish it, but they have to tell you when you ask.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, that's nice.
I think that it depends on probably in the next 2 years, as long as government doesn't completely grind to a halt, we'd have to get to a tipping point, right? That the federal government would say, okay, we need to actually get involved in this now. And it's something that I think would make sense, but depending on when they get there. But I think we're still going to see more states fall first. I don't know how many that would be, but
I think we're going to see one more thing that's going to make it real ugly, which is the court systems. Because a bunch of these are coming with the mechanism, the finding mechanism is actually an individual suing the company.
If that then involves race, gender, and then the EEOC gets involved in that.
We're going to see the courts get bogged down in this a little bit too, which I think will also drive. And that's what happened. I don't know if you remember this in CAN-SPAM. That's how we ended up with the CAN-SPAM law, was because I think it was the Kansas court system ground to a halt with these organizations being sued by a bunch of lawyers, actually, who were trying to catch companies breaking the Kansas spamming law. So this is what's going to happen, right? We're going to see the courts get bogged down. Too many states, that's too complicated, and hopefully we can smooth this thing out soon enough.
Well, and hopefully, and then also try to head off the end arounds too, which that tends to be that way. I think we covered quite a bit. We did pretty good, Leah.
I think we did. I think we did the topic justice.
I think so, yeah. And hopefully it spurs some conversations out there for those that are in our space that are listening to it. And, we hope that you come back to the Talent Sync. We've got lots of different topics planned, and we're going to try to get on a regular cadence of these. And we'd love to hear your feedback, too. If there's things that you'd like us to talk about, we will have guests at some point, too, that will do short interviews that depending on the topic that we're talking about. And we're always learning ourselves, right, Leah?
Absolutely. Constant learner. It's my favorite part of me and you.
Exactly. That's it. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap now. And I think it was been a great first podcast. And again, we thank you all for listening to this new show. I know there's a lot of things out there that compete for your time, but that we hope the Talent Sync will be one of the top downloads of 2023.
I hope so too. We can sync up.
Exactly.
There's so many sync jokes in here for us.
Endless possibilities.
I know.
All right, Leah. Well, it's great talking with you, and we're going to see you on the next time on the Talent Sync.
Awesome. Nice to talk to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Talent Sync podcast, a Talent Board and Job Sync collaborative podcast production. More episodes soon.